Now we'd like to offer you an opportunity to ask questions of our panel. So if you would, we have a microphone in the center of the room. If you would come up to the mic, give us your name and ask your question.
Don't be bashful.
My name is Don Nelson, and I may be the only civilian in the room. I have a question for the general. During my lifetime, every military catastrophe has been due largely to a failure of imagination. What is your institute doing and your sister institutes across the country to help identify the unimaginable?
Here's Mike.
We shouldn't have given you so much time to think about a question. Oh, thank you. That's an excellent question. Okay, Bob.
Wow. You know, I think as I was speaking to an aviation association last week, and you think back to the Wright brothers and where aviation has come in all of these years, 113 years or so, and you think about the evolution of that and the fact that over those years, people were thinking the unthinkable and how we could apply new technologies in ways that we never thought about. So if you think about where that has come from, it resides in people at institutions like this and within university systems like this. And I'm not just talking faculty. I'm talking about the student body who, unlike me, is a dinosaur with technology. They think things that I couldn't even imagine going forward. Our institute really tries to embrace those people who think the unthinkable in ways of defeating these things we call weapons of mass destruction. We haven't crossed the bridge yet on the technologies that will lend itself to protecting our first responders and our special operations forces that go behind enemy lines, that are engaged in conflicts that you and I can't think about or know about today. But if you realize that the technologies that we're dealing with today require people to really think beyond the imagination of where we are right now. And I think institutions like this is a bedrock for doing that. Now, I probably haven't directly answered your question, but I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I am an era of people who didn't have GPS navigation to fly around the globe or execute my mission back then. But systems that exist today were the evolution of time and the evolution of people who were committed to advancing this technology. When you think about even aviation today and looking at unmanned aerial vehicles and how they can be utilized in the collection of intelligence and the like, those same systems can be utilized to support any one of the colleagues up here in their journey to try to improve this whole way of bringing technology to bear in uses that are a contributor to our generations and the future, and how they can benefit from all of this new thinking and new technologies. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for that question. How about another one? This is great. Just form a line.
Good morning. I'm Robin Lally from the College of Nursing in Omaha. And my question pertains to mental health in rural America. Aside from the fact that there are far too few providers for mental health, what else do you see as the barriers and challenges in rural mental health that really create the large disparity that exists in that community?
This is really a key issue in many rural communities, and I'm happy to say that we have two really interesting projects underway to help address that need. And actually those projects are now going to be engaged with the interim study that the legislature has going on in looking at the shortage of mental health care workers across Nebraska. Our interest, I just will tell you, this is sort of typical of the way things happen at the Rural Futures Institute. Our interest in this issue, again, came not from some seminar somewhere. It came from my conversation with a longtime high school guidance counselor in Imperial, Nebraska, who said, "You ought to sit in my chair and have a young person in our school with a serious mental health issue and know that your closest provider is 150 miles away. In order for me to have this child in appropriate care, I would have to take them out of the school, out of the community, and create essentially a very public statement about this child in order to address what is a resolvable issue." That led us to, we were delighted to have folks like Dr. Howard Liu at the Med Center, Amanda Whitty at the Center for Research on Children, Youth, Family, and Schools. Each of them came to us with projects where we can use technology, a telemedicine approach, if you will, to connect. It's not only a matter of just making the teleconnection with a professional in the field. It is also engaging teachers, parents, folks in that community that can be dealing directly with the situation, in this case often a child, with the resources with whom we can connect them at the Med Center and other places. We think it's a critical issue, and we're seeing some real success in those projects already. And as I shared earlier, Dr. Liu's project has already attracted national attention. So we think we're doing some things in Nebraska that can be instructional in helping folks on the ground in communities all across the country.
Thank you, Chuck, and thank you for the question. Please.
Is this on? Becky Veek with First 5 Nebraska. And my question is for Sam. I'd like to follow up just a little bit on Don Nelson's question. Sam, how do you create the next generation of the future? How does early childhood play a role in creating individuals that can imagine the unimaginable? What are the principles in early childhood that create those skills?
And this is a friend of mine who's speaking, I want you to know. No, Peter says he doesn't want to meet my enemies. Well, I think what we're doing is the right thing, frankly. First of all, we're saying every single child counts. We're saying that children's potential needs to be treasured, it needs to be advanced, it needs to be protected. And to make that happen, we need to reach out to families, we need to reach out to communities, we need to reach out to the people who are working with those children and those families. That is the staff, the teachers, the caregivers, the communities, the boards of education, all sorts of, on a systematic level. We believe that is one of the key things. But something else we know, and I think every person here, regardless of what your professional work is, knows that when it comes to children, one of the most important things you're ever going to find, and certainly the research bears this out, is the relationship between the child and the adults in the child's life, in the child's world. And so we also have focused very explicitly, as I said earlier, on the workforce and also on the families of the children who we're working with. So these are all general statements I've just made to you. They become very, very particular, very specific as we look at the kinds of programs that we've addressed. And if we succeed, or I should not say if, as we succeed, as the gap between children who come from more advantaged as compared to less advantaged families, as that gap narrows and narrows, and hopefully, and we expect it to disappear as a result of the work that we're doing, we will see a whole new set of opportunities for citizens in this state and in this nation. That's one of the things where we are losing the greatest amount of resource possible. That's the social capital of children and families who have not been able to reach their potential. That's what we're aiming at.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for the question. Art, the last question of the morning.
Last question. Like the general, I came from the generation where a tactical response to nuclear war was duck and cover. I'm hoping my question is naive, and I'm hoping you'll tell me you're already doing all this. A long time ago, under the leadership of the National Science Foundation, they created what were called the Grand Challenges in Computing. And it was a set of issues, some very, very large, some a little more minute, that set metrics and goals to be solved by the engineering and science community. And they basically established an agenda. They established something people could work against. I know a bit about the DoD, I know a bit about NASA. In the other areas, I don't know that much. Value added is a very good concept. Value needed is also a good concept. I don't know the value needed in several of your areas. And I wanted to encourage you to set up the grand challenges, maybe the not so grand challenges, and articulate them so that people who are researchers and in the field like me can see what the problems are and say, oh, I've got an idea, and I can hand back to you. I don't know if you've established those and publicized them, but I would encourage you to do so.
I think that's a very good point, Art. I think the grand challenges in the field that we're working in many ways, they've now been sort of established at the global level around the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, there are 17 of them, but the ones that apply to the water for food sector, there's 2, and others are peripherally relevant. But certainly, yeah, elucidating those grand challenges, how they fit, I think that's something that we should focus on going forward. I think in many ways one of the grand challenges is the water for food security, and then how do we do that? It gets into all kinds of complexity, but how do we do that efficiently? How do we do that and not divert more water? I think that's the sort of grand challenge, but it's how we measure that, how we establish that. I think that's part of the challenge of the Institute as we go forward. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to their particular grand challenges.
I would just say from the rural perspective, I don't want to insult anybody when I say this, but I just would say it is our view that across the long history of rural development efforts, one of the problems has been that nobody measures. We do, but we don't measure impacts. We're trying to change that model, and so we have used our first graduate student did a study on the impacts of our competitive awards program. I may be mixing these up, Connie, going back and forth. Anyway, used another of our students to do an impact study on our rural serviceship program that comes back saying the average value, we've been in 16 communities now, the average impact of those students being there is something over $15,000 in impact on that community. So we're going to be going into a serious strategic planning process January through March 2017, working with some old friends. I don't need to go into all that. But a fundamental element of that planning process is going to be establishing those measurables in everything that we do so that we know, as we've got 20 different initiatives underway today, 41 projects in our competitive awards program, but that all of those things are feeding up to that impact on the community. So we think that's one of the things that we're doing that's a little different.
Bob has one last comment.
I do want to respond to your comment. I agree with you, and I grew up in a generation where duck and cover was real. I mean, the Cold War was real. The threats at that time were very specific, and we've dealt with those. I think today there are still real threats, and they don't all wear uniforms. The threats can be internal to our country as well as to our allies and other international partners that we deal with collectively in the various institutes here. The fact that the university here is engaged in working with the Department of Defense and other agencies to address national security issues really addresses the comment that you just made. I think it's very important to realize that the investments being made by the university and in each of the colleges and certainly in the faculty and students to address the future and how are we going to get there, how do we reduce these threats, is a very challenging thing, and it requires an investment by people like yourself and others who are willing to think about where we go and how do we get there and how do we create a less violent world that is now being attacked from a variety of threats that include cyber to violent extremist organizations that don't wear uniforms that walk our streets every day. So it's a huge challenge, but it's a challenge I think that the university has willingly stepped up to, and to be involved in the national security solutions is an important aspect, and I appreciate the fact that the university is very willing to do that and the fact that you all are involved in it.
Thank you, Bob. I would like to start out by saying that I'm so appreciative of the time and talent shared by our executive directors of our university-wide institutes, so thank you for joining us this morning. I also want to thank you for spending your first stop of the morning with us and learning more about our institutes. We hope that you have been able to connect with others in the room who have similar interests, maybe even different interests. We also hope that you will take a few moments to stop by and talk with one of our directors. There are tables set up that will be staffed as soon as we dismiss here, so please feel free to go over and to ask questions of them, maybe find out about other faculty who are involved with them that you might perhaps know, so that you might be able to reach out and find out from a colleague about the opportunity of working with an institute. We are very fortunate as a University of Nebraska to have the effort that we have today with these 4 university-wide institutes. And they are off to an excellent start. I have every reason to believe with all the time and talent here and across our campuses, we are on an upward trajectory. Thank you so much.
Great job.
You guys are great.